Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about the Advanced Configurator, specifically how you can activate the Advanced Configurator in a new environment and then create your first constraint model. So what we're going to go through today is different steps that you need to go through to activate the Advanced Configurator. So this does assume that you already have your org set up for Revenue Cloud. We've got videos on how to do that end to end, so look for that if you need to go through this. But once that's all set up and you want to be able to use the Advanced Configurator, here's what we're going to need to do. So first thing we need to do is we need to create the ConstraintEngineNodeStatus field, text area field on quote line item, order product, and asset action source. So we're going to create that field on those three objects. Then we're going to add that into our context. So the sales transaction context that you've already extended as part of the initial setup for Revenue Cloud. We're going to go in and modify it, and we're going to create the ConstraintEngineNodeStatus field on the sales transaction item and on asset transaction source. And then we're going to map it against the quote, the order, and the asset mappings and confirm that the transaction type mapping is set also in our extended transaction context. And finally, we're going to make sure that that extended version is activated. There is also a quote line item trigger that you need to deploy against the quote line item. So we're going to set that up. The code is available in Salesforce L, but I'll also put it against the blog. That's going to come along with this video. So if you're looking for that, the cloudupdate.co, and you're going to be able to find all the details there. And finally, we're going to enable the Advanced Configurator. And once that's done, we're going to go in and create two different constraint models for two different bundled products that we have in our environment. One, we're going to show how you can create a virtual quote to require a different product when a product is added to a quote, right? So I add product A and automatically product B is added, even if it's not part of the bundle. And the other example we're going to go through is how you can show or hide or disable attributes within a bundle based on field values from the quote record. So we're going to go through that example again. Now we've gone through our intro, the setup steps that we're going to go through. Let's go into Salesforce and see what that looks like. In Salesforce, I'm directly in setup. None of the steps that we've talked through so far have been done in this environment. So as we said earlier, a couple things we need to go through. First, create the field on quote line item, then order product, then on asset action source, right? So make sure you use the correct field name and label. That's again going to be in the documentation from Salesforce and also on our website if you need the step-by-step detailed with all that data. The type of field is going to be a text area long. That's it. Next, you will set the length to 5,000. Field label is going to be ConstraintEngineNodeStatus. Visible lines you can set to whichever value, and then the field name is going to be ConstraintEngineNodeStatus, but no underscores. So you're going to set that up and hit next. Go through, assign permissions where they should be assigned. Simply going to go through this and it's safe. Then we're going to go through and do the same thing again on the order product object. So back to order object manager, look for order product. You will then create a new field and do the same thing again. Text area long. Next, same thing here. Length is going to be 5,000. Field name, ConstraintEngineNodeStatus with no underscores. And field label is going to be the same as well. Feel free to skip ahead if you've gone through these steps already, but want to keep this detailed. So we'll go through and step by step, make sure everybody's following along. And finally, we'll do this one last time against the asset action source object. So asset action source, again, fields and relationship, create a new field, same type, same name here as well. And make sure your length is set to 5,000 as well. Once that's set, again, hit next. Make sure security is set correctly. Anyone that's going to use the Advanced Configurator should not be set to read only because Advanced Configurator will write to that field. So make sure that's not selected for anyone that should be able to use the Advanced Configurator. Once this is done, back to home within setup. Now we're going to go and modify our context definition. So look for context and setup, go into context definitions. So your context definition, again, is what maps data, right, from the context engine into the Salesforce records, right? So quote line item, order product. So this is where we want to make sure that field also exists and it is mapped over to the correct fields on our Salesforce object. So first thing you want to do is you want to edit your sales transaction context to add that new attribute within your nodes. So it needs to be added in two different places. So sales transaction item needs to have that in there. So we will set that again to, again, same thing as the field API name. So it's going to be ConstraintEngineNodeStatus. So you can simply add an attribute The name again is going to be ConstraintEngineNodeStatus. Type will be input and output. Data type will be a string. Once that's created on sales transaction item, you will also want to have that on asset action source within your context. Under asset action source, the attribute name will be slightly different. In this case, it's going to be asset constraint engine node status, but type will be the same, input, output, and data type will also be string in this scenario. And once that's done, you can hit next. Under sales transaction item, you're going to want to make sure you've got the attribute tag set for this new field. So you've got constraint engine node status at the end of your list there. So make sure you grab this, and we're going to add a tag for this. Again, constraint engine node status. System will add the underscore C at the end there. This is perfectly fine. And we'll go through the same thing for asset action source as well. Scroll all the way down to find your new attribute, and we'll set the tag for this as well here. So we'll set it to asset constraint engine node status, and finally done, and it's saved. So now that you've added the attributes to your context, now it's time to map this within the different mappings that we have under our context definition. So first place we want to go is under quote entities mapping. So you'll hit the down arrow right hand side of your quote entities mapping, edit subject mapping, and map. This is going to open up a new tab. Within that tab, this is where we're going to want to map it, map the new attribute from the left on our context under sales transaction item to the right on the specific object, in this case, quote line item. So what you want to look for on the left, you can search for your attribute. So you can simply search for constraint. That should reduce what we've got on the left-hand side. And you've got this under the sales transaction item, constraint engine node status. And on the right, you can do the same thing, search for field and look for constraint. Under quote line item, you should have one unmapped for your new field that we created earlier. Map one to the other. And the other element that we want to double check here is that transaction type is also mapped correctly from left to right. So if we search for transaction type on both sides, we do see that sales transaction type is mapped on our sales transaction header to the quote as well. So this is what we want, and this is good to go. So we can hit save. Once this one is saved, we can go back to our context definition, and we now want to map this under the order entities mapping as well. So let's head into the order entities mapping. We'll do the same thing, down arrow, map object, and then map again. We get that new screen on here as well. And let's do the same thing. We'll search for constraint on the left and on the right to reduce the number of choices that we've got here. And we will map the constraint engine node status attribute to our field on order item, slightly lower right there, constraint engine node status. Now we've got this mapping done as well. Again, you could double check that you've got transaction type mapped correctly within the order entities mapping as well. We do see that we've got the mapping from left again to right for transaction type. So we are good there. We're good to save. And then we only have one mapping left to confirm. Last one will be the asset entities mapping. So you find this one, and then again, far right, edit object mapping, and then map. We are going to get the new window. Now our search can be slightly different. So we want to search for asset constraint on the left and constraint on the right. And then under asset action source, we have our new field that we created earlier, constraint engine node status. And on the left, if you go all the way down to asset action source, you've got your unmapped attribute that we just created as well. Select this one, and on the right to the asset action source, and your mapping is done. So let's hit save. So now we've created our fields, created the attributes against our context. We've done the mapping. So all of this part of the setup is done. What's remaining now is let's go back to setup. In setup, we'll go into the object manager. Now at this point, do make sure that your context definition is active. It was already active in my scenario because I've already gone through the setup. Now you want to go in the object manager and look for quote line item, because we do need to create a trigger on the quote line item object. And again, this one is documented on Salesforce help, but I'll also post it along on my blog. So if you are looking for the specific code, go to my website, thecloudupdate.co. It's going to be linked in the description below. So feel free to go and grab it there. On the object manager for quote line item, you want to go under triggers, and you want to create a new trigger. Again, we'll simply use the code that was assigned and passed along in the documentation. There we go. That's all we needed to do there. We can hit save for this. Quote item trigger is set and ready to go for the advanced configurator. Now, at this point, what remains is simply to activate the advanced configurator. So we'll add into revenue settings. Under revenue settings, you will look for set up advanced configuration rules and constraints. Now we can turn that on. Once this is turned on, you should be ready to start creating constraint models for your different products. So let's see how we get there. So let's do a quick refresh of our screen and make sure we clear out cache, that everything is available. So I'll simply force a refresh of our page. Once it's refreshed, it's hit the menu, top left, right? And you want to look for constraints. So if you go in and hit constraint models, you're going to get your constraint model page where you can create a new constraint model. If you cannot see that tab within your environment, it's probably has to do with your profile and that tab not being visible. So double check your profile and make sure that the tab is enabled and visible for your profile or any profile that should be creating constraint models. And once this is ready to go, you can now hit new constraint model and start to create your new constraints. So let's give it a name, laptop model, context definition. You will want to make sure you use the context definition that we've used so far in our setup. And once this is done, you can hit save. That's going to create your new constraint model. And you will get your first constraint model version, which you can click into. This is going to give you this view where you can start to add products to your model and start to customize with either the visual builder or with CML. In your model, the first thing you want to do is you want to add the products that you want to work with within the advanced configurator. So you're going to hit add item. Now we want to select a product. So I'm going to add a specific product. Then within the list there, you want to select whichever product you want to start building rules for. So in our case, we want to bring in 2 different products to our constraint model. So I've got 2 bundles. And when in this scenario, we've got the smart office bundle, the remote work bundle. We're going to add both of those within our constraint model. And then the rule that we're going to build is that if we add the smart office bundle, the remote work bundle should also be added. So that's going to require that we add a virtual quote within the CML, not in the visual builder, where we're going to build this rule that if one is added, the other is required. Let's first select the products that you want to add and hit save. This should also import all the products that exist within your bundle as options, right? So we can see we have the bundles, but also everything that's part of that bundle shows up on the left as well. And if I extend this, we're going to see that they have a relationship that exists on there. Now, currently I'm in the visual builder. So if I do click on one of my product, I'm going to see it pop up on the main part of the screen, right? On the canvas there. And I can hit the plus sign to start to create different rules, right? So I can create basic logic, dynamic messages, conditional logic constraints, or a require rule. Now, for our example, we are going to switch over to the CML editor, which we're going to be able to do once we hit save. So let's simply save our current constraint model. And on the left-hand side, again, click the down arrow and up over to the CML editor. And then we're going to see the full CML as it is right now. Now, I know this gets into some developer work at this point, but if you are curious to test, you should be interested in learning. I think even if you're not a dev, I do also have a GPT available in ChatGPT. If you're curious, just hit me up. I can send you the link and share that with you. It does pretty well. So once you've imported and created your base model, if you share that with the GPT and tell it what kind of rules you're trying to build, it does a pretty good job most of the time at building rules that work and make sense. So what we'll do now is we're going to scroll down at the bottom of our current model, and we are going to add our virtual quote. So I've got a copy of that code working, and I'm happy to share that as well. It's going to be in the blog post, but we'll walk through exactly what it does. So let's just bring that up on our screen. So let's see what it does. So if we are building rules that exist within a specific bundle, you would build those rules within that bundle. But because in this scenario, we want to build rules that act across bundles, right? We do need to create a virtual quote rather. So the first thing that you need to add is that add virtual true. This is going to indicate to the CML that we're creating a virtual transaction level rule, right? So the type is quote. And then we're starting with our source context node, sales transaction item, right? So we're looking at sales transaction items within our virtual quotes. And then we're establishing the relationships, right? So the 2 products that we care about for that rule are the smart office bundle and the remote work bundle. Once we do establish that relationship, for those two products against a quote, then you can build your rules that will operate against those two different context nodes. So the rule that we're writing is a require rule because we are requiring a product to be added when another is added. So we're saying if the Smart Office bundle is added and it contains a monitor, a 24-inch monitor, right? So we're adding more depth to our rule there, not simply the Smart Office bundle. But if the Smart Office bundle is added with the 24-inch monitor, then you are requiring the remote work bundle to be added to your quote as well. And then you've got a message, Smart Office bundle with 24-inch requires a remote work bundle. Should not see that message because typically the rule will be followed and the product will be added automatically. Right? So this is how you would write your transaction level rule. Once you're done writing your rule, you can hit save your model, and then you can activate your model. Once your model is active, you're good to go, and you can actually go test this against a quote. So let's opt into a quote. On our quote, we're going to go ahead and test our scenario now. So if I hit on Browse Catalogs, I'm going to look for my Smart Office bundle. So what I know at this point is that the Smart Office bundle will come with the 24-inch monitor by default. So what should happen now is that if I hit add on that Smart Office bundle and save my quote, we should now have two products. The Smart Office bundle and the remote work bundle should get added if my rule is respected. And here's what happens, right? We get both products added onto our quote, and we can see that the 24-inch monitor was selected within that. So we do get the remote work bundle. We can test the CML works the other way around, right? So the remote work bundle was added because of that rule. So now if I go ahead and delete the Smart Office bundle from my quote, what should happen the other way around is that the remote work bundle will also get removed from my quote because CML respects user intent. That one should disappear as well, right? So we're back to square one here. But now, right, what you may think is, well, I did want the remote work bundle to be on there, but you didn't actually make that selection, right? So it does, again, respect user intent. So because you didn't actively add the remote work bundle, it only got added because of that rule, then it gets removed. But if you do that order of operation slightly differently as you're building your quote, right? So if I go in and I add my remote work bundle and it's saved, now the remote work bundle is added to my quote already before I add anything else. It's now showing up on there. If I go back to Browse Catalogs and now add the Smart Office bundle, CML doesn't need to do anything, right? Because the rule that it's trying to enforce is adding the remote work bundle, but it's already on my quote. So it doesn't need to add anything. It's already there. But now, again, because it respects user intent and the user wanted to add the remote work bundle, rule or not, now this is going to happen differently, right? So now that I delete my Smart Office bundle, it's saved on my quote. The remote work bundle will stay on my quote. It's going to remain on there, not going to get removed by the engine. Right now, my quote is saved. Remote work bundle remains on my quote and is still available to be sold to our customer, right? So this is some of the power of that engine, right? Where you don't need to rewrite rules all the different ways around because it tries to respect user intent as you go. That was the first example we wanted to walk through, right? So a cross-bundle rule within the transaction editor against your quote. Second example is we added a custom field. So this one's already created, custom permission, simply a custom checkbox field that I can check manually or not. But this could also be a formula field that's based on the profile and a custom permission, right? That's always set. The idea here is simply to show how we can build rules that act based on fields that are on your quote there, right? So what we want to do is we're going to go in and create a new constraint model. The one we want to create now is going to be for a separate product. So let's add back into our constraint models. We will create a new constraint model. Let's call it ThinkStation P2 context definition. Again, I always want to select the active context definition for your constraint models. Hit save and open your first model version. So again, steps are going to be similar here. First thing I need to do is add my item. So I'll next on this, look for my ThinkStation product, ThinkSystem rather. I'll add this on, hit save. And again, my product is brought into it. This one is not a bundle. All it's got is attributes because I want to show how we can hide and disable attributes based on those quote field values. So my product is added now. I can hit save. This one again is going to be fairly simple. So I'll jump into the CML editor. We can see that we've got our ThinkSystem line item, and we've got our two attributes, margin and revenue. One as a default value, the other does not. And now we want to add our rules to hide and disable based on that custom field that we've got on the header of our quote. So again, my field is already created there, and it's also already mapped against my context definition. So make sure if you do want to test that out, you create the field on the object, and you also map it and create the attribute on your context definition. So again, I'll paste the rules that I've already built. And again, I'll make those available on the blog post that comes with this. So if you need to look at that in more details, it's going to be available on there. So 2 rules that I'm setting up here. So we are saying, and we also do need to, because this is coming from the header, sorry, we need to bring in the field from the header. So what we're doing, first thing is we're importing that sales transaction field on there. So context path, sales transaction, custom permission quote. And to be clear here, this is not directly the field, right? This is coming from the context. So what we're truly bringing is the attribute that simply happens to match, in this case, the field name from my field that I've created on the quote. And then we are saying that it's an external Boolean field, and here's the tag that we're going to use down in our rules. And now the rules that we're building are fairly simple. So 2 rule type of constraint. So it's a rule. The test that we're doing is custom permission quote equal true on our quote header? If it is, I want to hide the attribute that's margin. And the other one is same thing again, rule custom permission quote equals true. Now we want to disable the attribute revenue. So hiding and disabling you could do with product options as well, right? So anything that's a component of your bundle, but I wanted to show it with attributes in this specific scenario. Once this is good to go, you can again hit save and then activate your new constraint model. Once your new constraint model is active, we can now add back onto a quote and test that out. So let's again look for a quote. So we've got one here. Custom permission right now is false. So let's add back into our line. So we already have the Think System product added on here. So let's add into configuration. So we'll hit configure. And we've got our 2 fields showing some crazy values, but they are both visible at this point within the configurator, right? So we've got the margin, revenue, because our field value is false. So we can save and exit, let that recalculate. Not much to do on here at this point. But now if we head into the details and we set that to true, and again, right now this is a manual value, but it could be automated true flow, or it could be a formula that's coming from a custom permission to validate that the user should or should not have access to one of those attributes, right? So if I add back into configuration now, this looks quite different, right? So I've got revenue, which is disabled because that's what the rule was asked to do. And then margin is simply not on there anymore because we did hide that attribute entirely in our CML. So those are hidden, they can be modified, and they can be edited by your user at this point. So this was how you can get going with the Advanced Configurator. I know I already made a couple of videos on the Advanced Configurator, but never started from scratch. So here's how you can do. The other 2 videos that we've got in the playlist for Advanced Configurator are also going to be very helpful for you. If you are looking to learn more about the Advanced Configurator, make sure you watch through them. Again, I do also have a custom GPT available. It's going to be pretty good at helping you write that CML for your products. So if you're interested, leave a shout out, comment in the video and I'll make sure to reach out to you and share that link to that custom GPT. That could be helpful as you're testing out the Advanced Configurator. As usual, thanks for watching. Please take a moment to subscribe and have a great day.